Hi there, Simon here from Simon Says. Are you having problems with smart home devices falling off your network and slow internet response when you're watching a movie? If so, let's have a chat about routers. So when I started my smart home journey about a year ago, I had initially a couple of Wi-Fi downlights and an Amazon Alexa connected to Home Assistant. And in the beginning it worked really well. But then as I started adding more and more devices, they randomly started falling off the network. And I couldn't figure out why. Plus the internet speed on the phones and the TV seemed to be slowing down and buffering and things as well. So I called my ISP, and the first thing they asked me was how many devices that I had connected. Said to them I had about 20 at that stage. So that was the first problem. They said to me that the device they had supplied was limited to 15 connections. So I knew I had to find a new router. So I started looking around, and first consideration was a mesh system. This was pretty expensive, somewhere between $500 and $1,000, and was a bit more than what I wanted to spend. Secondly, to get the best performance, I needed to have hard wiring. So I didn't have Cat 6 installed in my house. So I looked around at some other routers, but even they were sort of between sort of $300 and $500 for a reasonable looking router. So I searched around on the internet, but came across a YouTube video where someone was introducing this Dynalink AX3600 as a really good router. And the big thing that really stood out to me, first of all, was this had 200 connections. So for me, that was awesome. So I went on Amazon, found it on Amazon, couldn't find it locally, ordered the device, and within 7 days it was at my doorstep, which was pretty exciting. So I took it out of the box, and first thing I realized was American plug. So I had to use an adapter, not a major problem. Plugged it in, unplugged my current router, and plugged it in and tried to get it connected. Didn't want to connect. Phoned the ISP. Now, I must tell you that I had phoned the ISP before, showed them the router I was buying, and they'd said it would work fine in New Zealand. Connected it up, phoned them, and they then told me, no, this router is not supported by our network. So that was really, really frustrating. So I thought a little bit and then watched a few more videos, and I came up with this idea of leaving my existing router in place, plugging this new router in, and using this router as the Wi-Fi component to the router. Plugged it in, and first of all, it seemed to work quite well, but started giving a few issues after a day or two. So I then realized that I've got now two Wi-Fi networks on the same house. So that was obviously interfering. So I went into the admin settings, the other router, and removed the Wi-Fi component. So I switched the Wi-Fi off totally. So now I just had the Dynalink operating as my Wi-Fi router, and I had the ISP one working as a modem, which was connecting to the fiber that comes into my house. Got that all running, and great. Absolutely awesome. I think when I ordered this router, I paid about 160 New Zealand dollars, which to me was fantastic. I see now, just had a look now, they have gone up over the $200 mark now, but I still think value for money, this router is a really great buy. So before going into the specs of this router, just to give you an idea, I've got a fairly large house. It's double story and 360 square meters, or 3,600 square feet. So that's a pretty large house to be covered with one single Wi-Fi router. I must admit, I am very, very impressed. Majority of the house has got really, really good coverage. The only areas are one bedroom on the upstairs of my house. The signal is quite low, but everywhere else in the house is really good. I even have a Shelly uni sitting outside at my water tank, which is probably 20 to 25 meters away from the router, and I've got great coverage of that. The Shelly uni's got an external antenna, and it works really, really well. So I must admit, I can't speak highly enough of this router. Speed-wise, I'm just on a standard plan, so I'm getting my 100 megabits per second, and it's working really well for streaming movies, for YouTube's, and for all of my IoT devices. They're all connecting perfectly well now, and absolutely no problems. I had one issue where I moved the router a little bit closer to the Raspberry Pi, and the internet, well, obviously the signal started getting corrupted by the two devices being so close. But I've now realized you need to keep them at least sort of half a meter away. And ideally the router should be placed up on a table away from any sort of other smart devices. This router is really good looking. As you can see, it looks like a smart speaker. It's not ugly with all these aerials sticking out of it, even though it has 4 internal aerials. It actually looks quite decent, and it doesn't have all these flashing lights. It's got a single LED, which you can turn off if you want to. So it's a really good looking router. Talking about some of the specs, it's got a 2.2 gigahertz quad core processor and 1 gig of RAM. So it seems to be really fast on the processing side, but the big thing for me was those 200 devices and the coverage. So they're claiming 480 square meter of coverage. As I say, I've got 350 square meters and I've got the 1 bedroom where I'm struggling with the signal. But seeing as it's spread over a large area, I'm actually very, very impressed. It does have 4 Ethernet ports on the back. So things like my Raspberry Pi, I've got that plugged in there, and that works really well. Some of the features that I'm using that seem to help a lot, first of all, is the airtime fairness on this device. And that's basically prioritizing traffic to heavy using devices. So things like TVs and computers and phones that are actually streaming video, it's allowing them priority over the less hungry devices like your IoT devices, which are just pushing a small number of bytes up and down as a communication protocol. But it's giving that extra bandwidth to these cameras and other intensive use of devices. MU-MIO. Now, this is all about allowing multiple devices to talk to the router at one time. So imagine you go to a grocery store and you buy all your shopping and you get to the till and there's only one till open with a queue of 10 people. Imagine if you had 5 or 10 tellers operating, you could immediately go and pay for your goods and get out of the store. So that's the sort of thing that this MU-MIO component is doing. It's allowing those multiple discussions at the same time, which is really, really good. So honestly, this for me is a great router. I would honestly recommend it for anyone that is looking for a really cost-effective solution to run your home automation devices on, as well as all those other devices. Have a great day and speak again. Goodbye from Simon Says.